Hello, and welcome to another segment of The Great Reveal. Purpose of these videos that I will be doing in the weeks to come is to share with you my spiritual and religious journey that ultimately led to my decision to leave religion and to leave traditional westernized Christianity. So with that being said, last video I did an introduction just to kind of prep you so that you would understand why I was doing these videos and why at this time. Now I want to dive in and share with you and open up to you what my journey looked like from the very beginning. Again, I reiterate, I do not intend to try to force anyone to change what they believe. You have the right to choose for yourself. I only wish to share with those who would listen what my journey looked like and what led me to the decision that I made. And I am quite at peace with my decision. It was not a haphazard decision. I did not make it overnight. This decision evolved over 35 plus years of digging, researching, asking, reaching out to various people that I'll share along the way in these videos. The people that I've reached out to, the questions that I had, and the resolves that I came to. So in this one, I want to start off as early as my mind would allow me. I am a bit up in age now, so I'm not a young buck anymore. There's some things of my youthful past that are still somewhat of a blur for me for various reasons that I just won't get into in this video. But I've titled this video, The Great Reveal, Trained Without Choice. And I chose that topic specifically because it highlights what my early experience with religion and Christianity looked like. So with that being said, I want to go to a source, a material source that I'm sure many of you are very familiar with. Bear in mind with me that I don't have a problem referencing the Bible because a great deal of what I will be talking about has a lot to do with the Bible. So with that being said, I have with me here an authorized King James Version. It is the Thompson Chain Reference Bible, and I've had this Bible since 1984. And I've held on to this Bible, and I continue to go through this Bible in my studies and in my research. And so I want to read a very familiar passage of Scripture as the foundation of what I'm going to talk about in these next few moments, out of the book of Proverbs, which is commonly known as the book of moral virtues and their contrary vices. And in the 22nd chapter, the 6th verse. Now it sounds to you like I'm getting ready to start a Bible study or a preaching message. No, this is open discussion as to, what I was exposed to. So follow me if you will. Proverbs 22 and 6 says to train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, the new authorized King James Version pretty much says it the exact same way. But there's a footnote that I want to share with you that is in the New King James Version. And that footnote, again, this is from someone else's study of the scripture and the resolve that they've come to, what they believe this passage of scripture is saying to those who are followers of God and committed to the Christian way. And what it says here is train up has the idea of a parent graciously investing in a child whatever wisdom, love, nurture, and discipline is needed for him to become fully committed to God. It presupposes the emotional and spiritual maturity of the parent to do so. And the way he should go is to do the training according to the unique personality, gifts, and aspirations of the child. It also means to train the child to avoid whatever natural tendencies he might have that would prevent total commitment to God. For example, a weak will, a lack of discipline, a susceptibility to depression. Hence, the promise is that proper development ensures the child will stay committed to God. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the presuppositions that was just mentioned in that footnote. Number one, the training of the child is considered a parental duty. Whether you are a believer or a non-believer or of any other persuasion, if you have created children, you have an obligation and a duty to train your children, to train them to be the best persons that they can be, to aid them and assist them and shape and mold them as they go through their stages of development and growth. That is natural. That's a natural expectation that a parent should take upon themselves once becoming a parent. You need not a Bible or a scripture passage to tell you as a parent that this is what you should be doing. However, we do need to take into consideration the pre-exposures of the parent. And so I say that because when I think back to my youthful days, as much as I can remember, I have a very vague memory of actually living with my biological mother and biological father. There's just too many missing pieces. I have snapshots of me probably around the age of 3 or 4, where I was living with my mother and my older brother and a fella that my mother was involved with. And that was, if I remember correctly, my siblings could probably shed more light for me. That would have been on St. John's Place in Rochester in Brooklyn, New York. And like I said, it's a very vague memory. I don't know how many days, months, or years we were there at that location, because I only have snapshots of events that stood out to me. So I really can't speak to how I was being trained at that early age, except for one experience where I had a few coins in my pocket and I was a fan of Yodel's chocolate covered treats. And I went around the corner to the store, and instead of buying them, I stole them. I must have been about 3 or 4 years old. I know I wasn't too old. And of course, the store owner knew my mother knew us very well. Somehow word got back to my mother what I did. She marched me right back around there to that store, made me apologize to the man, pay him for taking the treats, and then, if I remember correctly, I think she went into my rear end, and I never did that again. Now, is that a form of training? Absolutely. What was the lesson there? Don't steal. Okay, simple lesson. Training that stuck from that day forward. I've not stolen anything from a store ever again. I got the lesson and got it well. So training is important, and I believe that you would agree that training is indeed important. Another component to training is your training, that if you are the provider of training, then you can only provide what you are knowledgeable of. Are you following me? I'm going somewhere with this, because the next memories that I have that are somewhat vivid is me living with my godmother. We called her Auntie Seal. And I have memories of living with her. Now, mind you, that was at 24 Patchen Avenue and Van Buren in Brooklyn, New York, in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn, New York. I have memories of living with her. I have little to no recollection of my biological father visiting with us at that address or the previous address. Little to no recollection whatsoever. I'm told that my mother actually lived across the street from us in an apartment that she could afford. I have little to no recollection of that event. I do have some recollection of her occasionally picking us up from my Auntie Seal's house and taking her with her on a weekend to stay with her and her fiance in another area of Brooklyn, which was on Prospect Place right off of Underhill Avenue, the Prospect Heights section of Brooklyn. So as I said, my youthful memories are vague, scattered, and clouded. So what I do remember is what I'm speaking to. Now, I do remember that on one particular occasion, and this was not often, this was just one event that I remember clearly, and it was right around, I want to say, what is called Easter. And I stress that for a reason, and you'll find out, I'm sure, later on throughout this series why I stressed it in that manner. So I remember us going down to this church. The name of it, I remember, was Antioch Baptist Church. And believe it or not, I am still looking for that church because I had an experience there that permeated my thoughts and has remained with me ever since. It wasn't a bad experience. It was actually fun. It was a lot of fun. And it was quite humorous to me, even as a child. I remember her marching us down to the church for a service. It must have been a revival because, during revivals in the church, it's a high time of excitement and it's jovial and there's a lot of music and folks are happy and they're smiling and they're hugging each other and glad to see each other. Revival was a good time, okay? And so I do have a memory of that experience. However, I do not have any memories or recollections or snapshots of either my mother or my father or my Auntie Seal or my Uncle Bill, her husband, or even my older god cousins, Derek or Tyrone, sitting down with us, gathering us up, and going through the scriptures with us and training us in the scriptures. Are you following what I'm saying here? I have no recollection of that happening or being a part of my growth and development, though I had been exposed to religion at a very young age and exposed to this thing called Christianity, but without explanation, without background, without any formal guidance. Now, those are my very early years. So, when my mother remarried, and when my mother remarried, my stepfather, who became the daddy that I would know, and I love the man dearly, Kenrick Armstrong, and to this day I have the utmost respect, love, and admiration for the man. He did for me what my biological father failed to do. Now I don't hate my biological father. Okay, this is just history that shaped and molded me. And so he was raised in a household where they were Seventh-day Adventists. Now, he didn't go to church regularly, but what they did do when my mother married and we moved in the household with them on Underhill Avenue, Saturday morning, he would either take us to church, and as we got old enough, they would give us bus fare to take ourselves to church. And coming back from church, of course, they would ask, so how was church today? Now, we went to Sabbath school and then the service. Well, Sabbath school during the summer was fun. It really was. It was exciting. It was fun. There was a lot of games that we played to try to learn the Bible stories, and that was fun. Then as we started getting a little up in age and knew our way around Brooklyn quite well, when they were giving us the money to catch the bus ourselves and go to church, instead of going to Sabbath school, we would go to Prospect Park. I mean, after all, we're children. Children do what children do, And so again, we're speaking to the parental duties, the obligation of parents to train, right? And so again, it goes back to you could only train from a position of what you yourself have been exposed to and have knowledge of to be able to share any wisdom in that area. And so that speaks to the gaps and the broken pieces in the training. And so I didn't get much training directly. I got a lot of indirect training. And if you understand what I'm saying, and then this was not by choice. As a young child, children, for the most part, many that I've interacted with over the years have little to no choice in how they are trained, how they're being brought up, what they are being exposed to. Little to no choice. I know I had little to no choice. No one asked me as a young child, would you like to learn about the church? Would you like to learn about God? Would you like to learn about the Bible? No one asks their children this question. So if you are brought up in a household and that is the persuasion of the household from generations before, it does not necessarily mean that they are the most knowledgeable in what they have been predisposed to. And you can only pass on what you are knowledgeable of, what you have experienced firsthand, what you have gained an understanding of over the years. You can't pass on any more than that. And in the surroundings that I was in, adults spoke of God, but it was not teaching moments. It was not training. It was more so if they were in trouble, you'd hear an occasional, oh my God. or Jesus help, you know. And as children, we had no clue what that meant. What were they saying? Who is this God? Who is this Jesus? We had no clue whatsoever. But that is what we often heard in the household. Or we would hear things like, if you had a question that was controversial or complex about the Bible, you would hear, you don't question God. You simply believe God is God and you don't question God. Now, I grew up with those kind of responses. And me being the type of young child that I was always inquisitive. I was the type of child that if you told me something, yes, because you are an adult, I believed you, but something within me would question the validity of what you told me. And so I would want to know more information. I would want more details. I would want an explanation as to why it is what you just said it is. Now, that's just the type of child that I was. I had absolutely no control over the brain that developed in my cranium. I had nothing to do with that. I had no say-so on how my brain would develop inside my cranium. And I certainly had no control over the impulses that would stimulate my brain to form thought that would emerge into questions. I had no control over that. It is a function of the brain that I myself as a young child had no control over. I just was inquisitive, and rightfully so. If you don't ask questions, there is no opportunity for an exchange of thoughts to lead you to a conclusive resolution. And now I could not explain that as a child. I just knew that if you said something to me that raised a question in my mind, it bared for an answer. And oftentimes that answer was, you don't question God. Now that was a head scratcher for me as a child, because I'm looking you in the face as the adult who has supervision of my life, and I'm asking you the question. I'm not asking a God that I've never met, a God that I've never experienced, a God that I knew little to nothing about. I'm asking you the question. What do you mean you don't question God? I don't hear God speaking. I don't know how God speaks. I remember, I'm a child. So I am trying to have a human experience and an exchange with another human being that I can see, that I can touch, and that I can interact with. And I'm asking you the question, what do you mean you don't question God? Well, of course, I would find out years later that whenever they threw that answer out to you, primarily they themselves did not know the answer. Secondly, they were simply following what they were trained in. You don't question God. Thirdly, they were not knowledgeable of the scriptures to be able to provide an answer. Now, I found this out years down the road as a result of my own personal research and studies and digging into scriptures and the original language as far back as historical evidence would allow for us to go. But as a child, I did not know this. And so it left an impression on my mind that I was being made to do something that I did not necessarily agree with, and did not have an opportunity to make a choice in the matter other than you do as you are told. Now that's a whole nother discussion, the do as you told, not as I do factor, because that was very prevalent in the households that I came up in. You do as I say, not as I do. It is a form of training. It is. And basically, in that you are teaching a young person to be deceptive. You're teaching them to circumvent protocols and processes and procedures. And you are not only teaching them those things, but you are showing them by action that your actions have greater weight than your words. A lot we can get out of that. Now, I'm not trying to be a psychologist and give you a psychological explanation of how things work and how the mind works. I'm just trying to share with you what I was predisposed to as a child. And I did not have the luxury of saying, I don't agree with that. That doesn't set well with me. I am not in agreement with that. Is there an option for me? Is there an alternative for me? And God forbid, yes, I said God forbid, God forbid should a child raise the argument of an alternative for them to believe in. If you are brought up in a Christian household, there is no alternative. And as a child, you don't understand that. Children don't understand that there is no alternative. Children don't understand that you do it because this is what we have always done in our lineage. Well, I think what would have been helpful is to first give me, I'm talking about me, give me some background on the history of my ancestors and how we came into this thing called Christianity. Give me that history. Give me the origins of how this came about. And I'm going to talk more about that in following videos, how my research led me to start questioning the origins of what is now in existence, and whether it is factual or made up. Is it truthful or myth? I will tell you this. One thing that I did discover as I began to dig into Scripture is that there is much in the Bible that we have today, regardless of the version or translation, that is truthfully stated, but not necessarily true. And I'm going to leave you with that until next time that we shall have this moment together. Thank you again for tuning in. If you're liking the way the videos are going, this is only the second one, I know. Do give me some feedback. Subscribe to my page, Akwasi Speaks. That's AKWASI Speaks, SPEAKS. Do subscribe to my page here on YouTube. And let me know your thoughts. I'm certainly open to your feedback. Again, like I said, my videos, I do not intend to persuade you to believe other than what you choose to believe. It is not my place to tell you what to believe. I do want to share my journey with you. Thank you for tuning in, and I say,